Guess what? I get to talk about my most favorite topic when it comes to being a notary. About 2 weeks ago, the National Notary Association published a very interesting article in its notary bulletin. You can find the article on the NNA's website, nationalnotary.org. Here, let me show you what I'm talking about. The name of the article, 10 E&O cases that landed notaries in court. E&O stands for errors and omissions. And yeah, this really gets me going. I think I enjoy these topics. And I've always been kind of a mystery, whodunit type of person. I've also been a licensed private investigator for the past 7 years. So the whole legal field really interests me. And the fact that they took the time, the NNA, to gather this information together, I'm just pleased as punch. I really am. Um, I did do a video a few weeks ago on why I continue to be a member of the National Notary Association. And this is it, really. They do a really good job, I feel, in pushing out information to their members that is educational. So, um, again, this is part of the Notary Bulletin, I believe, and I don't think you have to be an NA member to access this article. I'll make sure that I put their website URL in the description below. And as you can see, it's a recent article. So we're not talking about the cases that we notaries have heard about years ago. These are relatively new cases. You know how long-winded I can be, so I am not going to go over all 10 cases. I want to just call out four that really stood out to me and that I think would be helpful, not only to notaries here in Alabama, but in any state. So I hope you will follow along while we look at these different cases. All right, the first one is mistakenly using an expired notary seal. So in this case, an employee notary mistakenly used an expired seal on a corporate document, rendering the notarization invalid. The customer required a new notarization, and the company had to pay $700 to redo the paperwork. And so the takeaway from this case, the NNA says, is we notaries need to use our notary seals properly. And I know some of you might be thinking, I mean, what's an expired seal? And so I believe in this article, the notary used their official notary seal that must have been expired or outdated and did not reflect the correct information. So how could that happen? Well, here in Alabama, um, we have certain requirements as to what goes on our notary seal and what doesn't go on our notary seal. And as you know, laws do change. And so it is possible that this notary in question, which way do I point? There we go. This notary right here, it's possible that the notary maybe had a name change. And so the notary's correct current legal name was not reflected on the seal. It's also possible, because we're not told what state the notary is in, it's possible that this notary may have had an expired commission expiration date reflected on the seal. But whatever the issue, the notarization was invalid, and the entire signing and notarization process had to be redone. Now, I did watch a video recently from a content creator who said in Alabama, you need to add your county name to your seal. That is incorrect. So if you come across that video, Alabama notaries, the only three things that the state of Alabama tells us in the law, in our Alabama code, is to have our commission name, the name that's reflected on our notary commission, our title, notary public, and our jurisdiction, which is Alabama state at large. Those are the only three things that are mentioned. Now, there are Alabama notaries who will add their commission expiration date to the seal as well. But that's really all I can think of that happened with this notary, that it reflected a former name, not their current name, or had an expiration date that they hadn't purchased a new seal. And I could see how that could happen. I know when I renewed my commission recently, I was asked to notarize a signature, and I was still waiting for my new stamp to come in. Now, I had my old stamp, and I'll be honest with you, for a quick minute, I was like, you know, I'm active, so it's not like my commission was inactive, but I knew that there had been a change that needed to be reflected on my seal, so I turned down the notarization. Thankfully, this notary was employed, and their employer paid the $700. But as you're going to see in a moment, that $700 is nothing compared to what we're about to see. All right, moving on. In this next case, using the wrong notarial certificate, a California notary used an incorrect notarial certificate, which resulted in the recorder's office rejecting a deed of trust. The mistake caused recording delays and legal proceedings in which the notary testified. Ultimately, the notary was removed from the case, but not before her attorney fees amounted to $20,000 of her $25,000 policy. The takeaway for the NNA is, and the takeaway, whenever we read the takeaway, that's the lesson for us notaries. Double check that you are using the correct notarial wording. This is something that I feel gets overlooked far too often. So, Alabama notaries, there is specific notarial wording that we need to use whenever we perform notarizations. This information, the certificate wording, is covered in our Alabama Notary Training Course. It is also outlined in the Alabama Code. So if you are not aware of this, now is the time for you to become aware of it, very aware. I believe I may have another video on this topic. If so, I will link it to this video or in the description. But it's best for you to go to the source, and that source for the training is the Alabama Probate Judges Association's website. I'll paste the URL in the description. So, California is known for a couple things. One, to become a notary, to renew your commission, you have to take mandatory training and an exam. And I'm not talking about open book, easy peasy. Folks struggle passing that exam. And good for California because it weeds out, I feel, individuals who are not really willing to dig in and study and take the law seriously. But yes, their notarial certificates are some of the most complex notarial certificates out there. And it sounds as if this notary did not use the correct one, but the fact that the notary was removed from the case suggests to me that the court did not feel as if the notary was acting maliciously or fraudulently or carelessly, all right? But still, and it means this notary's attorney earned every bit of that $20,000. Keep in mind, attorney fees can also include things like fees for private investigators, gathering records. Yes, the attorney's hourly fees, but there's a lot in there. I know years ago I thought it was like just making the attorneys rich, but they do have a lot of expenses. So good for this notary for having at least a $25,000 notary errors and omission insurance policy. So that means this notary now has a balance of $5,000 with their policy until the end of the policy term. And hopefully, when it's time for the notary to renew their commission and renew their policy, hopefully the insurance company will renew, sell her another $25,000 policy or higher. But yeah, she almost maxed out. She or he almost maxed out, her policy. It's a good thing that she did not go cheap and just go with a $10,000 policy. Being able to, I think a lot of times notaries forget that a big part of the E&O policy is going to cover those attorney fees. Okay. So for this one, probably seemed like a small matter, turned out to be a $20,000 matter. So again, I mentioned, just to restate, Alabama notaries, due to the new law that went into effect September 2023, there are certain requirements in for us that our notarial certificates contain certain language. And without getting into specifics, what for Alabama, as well as California, what they're getting at is some of the older notarial certificates have very vague uh, wording, phrasing, open-ended sentences that will make it easy for someone to, other than the notary, to make changes so that it appears the notary may have met with three people when in fact they only met with one. So the notarial certificates, it tells the story. It describes where the notarization took place, when it took place, who the notary met with, whether or not an oath was administered or not, and all of that information needs to be accurate. All right, moving on to the third scenario. Trouble with remote online notarization. Now, hold on. I know some of you in Alabama are like, well, why are we talking about that since we don't have remote online notarization? I know, but it's a good takeaway. And because I've been following this case for at least 2 years when I heard about it. And I was really surprised that it's finally done. Anyway, so in Alabama, yeah, y'all, I get this excited. I really do. In Alabama, while we don't have RON, we do have REN. We have Alabama Remote Ink Notarization. And so I feel as if there are still lessons that we can learn at good takeaways from this example. All right, here's the case. A Virginia notary authorized to perform remote online notarizations completed a signing that turned out to be fraudulent. The video recording of the transaction indicated that the notary did not follow proper procedures by failing to examine the signer's ID documents properly. They're talking about ID cards. And the notary permitted a second person in the room to assist the signer with the knowledge-based authentication questions, KBA. The case landed in court and the notary incurred, check this out, you all, $75,000 in settlement and legal fees, both of which was paid out of her $100,000 errors and omission insurance policy. Honey child, $75,000. That's a lot of money. Thank goodness she didn't just have a $25,000 policy. The takeaway, always follow proper procedures for remote online notarizations. The takeaway for every notarization, follow proper procedures. But I think I know why the NNA said for Ron, because there's a video recording of it. Without the recording, the lawyer probably wouldn't have had as much work to do to try to minimize his client's responsibility, accountability, or role in this, but it's all on videotape. The court watched the video and saw what took place, which is why when new notaries reach out to me by email, by phone, by multiple ways, and say, Michelle, I just got commission and I want to start doing remote notarizations. And I get it. I think remote notarizations, I think it kind of implies that that notarizations performed remotely might be easier to do because it's not always comfortable or easy meeting strangers in person. You got to get in your car, you got to meet them somewhere. And you never know who, there's still that safety concern. So I think some, not all, are they like that being at a distance. But as you can see, you know, when you read more, I read more about it, it sounds as if the notary made an attempt to do the right thing, but unfortunately did not examine their ID. You might be wondering, well, how could the notary examine the ID? Well, I want to make sure, I don't mind showing you this one. By part of the is holding it up to the camera, even for Ren, telling them to turn it over on the back, comparing the image to what is in a ID checking guidebook. Really making sure that it is legible. Now, obviously, that's not even a good image. Yeah, that looks like me, but you couldn't read the words. You couldn't read the name properly. So yeah, if you read the court records, they really get into the specifics where I guess the video is playing and commentary is being made. And then for the knowledge-based authentication questions, the signer is supposed to know that information and not get help from someone else in the room. And so maybe this notary didn't know that or forgot, got flustered, which is easy to do. Before I leave Ron, I'm going to skip ahead. I'm not going to bring it up on the screen, but because I'm only going to, shuckums, where is it? That's not it. But one of the other 10 cases deals with Ron, remote notarization, I should say. And I'm just going to mention one thing briefly because this has come up several times here in Alabama, where a Pennsylvania notary got into hot water while doing a personal favor for a friend during COVID. The signer needed to be, the notary performed the notarization via Skype, even though she was not commissioned as an electronic notary. So the problems with this is she knew she shouldn't do a remote notarization, but because it was for a friend and because it was COVID, She made an exception. We don't have the authority to do those exceptions. We don't. Notaries, we don't have the authority to make exceptions to our laws. And she did it, so she performed a remote notarization, even though in Pennsylvania, I guess you're supposed to be appointed as a remote notary. And then she chose to use Skype. I bring this up because it was brought to my attention more than once that there are Alabama notaries performing remote notarizations using Skype. When it's been brought to my attention, I am quick to inform them that Skype doesn't qualify. Now, I haven't checked out Skype here lately. They may have added new features, but during COVID, they definitely did not qualify for Alabama remote ink notarization. And according to this article, Skype didn't qualify for Pennsylvania's remote notarization either. We cannot make exceptions. And then the other issue with this, I know someone is watching this video saying, she shouldn't have notarized for a friend. And you're right. She shouldn't have. Now, it may not have been illegal. I don't think Pennsylvania notary law says you can't notarize your friend's signature, but guess what? There are times when notarizing a friend's signature isn't the best option. Because if we're talking about my Ace Boom Coombs, my besties, my BFFs, I'm not going to be as objective with certain notarizations. Now, if my BFF needs to get a passport and the application form requires notarization, no problem with that. But with this Virginia notary, yeah, they didn't get into it, did they? Hang on. Okay, this Virginia notary, this dealt with property. Okay. And whenever you're notarizing documents dealing with property, it's a big deal and a costly deal. And for Pennsylvania, what was it? It dealt with property. The signer needed to be appointed executor of a deceased parent's estate, but lived in a different state than the notary. And, oh yeah, I'm gonna stop there. Just a whole lot going on. So we already talked about the Pennsylvania notary incurred a $75,000 settlement and legal fee cost. In Pennsylvania, oh, I guess I shouldn't be talking about this. It sounds like this one is still ongoing because the NNA's article reads, legal costs were incurred and the notary will likely lose several $1,000s of her $25,000 policy. The good news is that both of these notaries were smart enough to purchase errors and omission insurance. All right, the last one I want to talk about. And again, I hope it won't be the last one that you'll read about because I want you to read the whole article as soon as you get an opportunity. And by the way, if you're finding this sort of thing interesting and helpful and educational, let me know by giving the video a thumbs up and letting me know in the comments. All right. The last one I want to talk about. Let me bring it up on the screen. Yeah, lots of good stuff. It was hard for me to um, choose which ones to cover with you. So many options. All right, this is doing the right thing, but still ending up in court. That sucks. All right, complications with a holographic will. Are you familiar with that term, holographic will? I had to look it up. I had heard it before I read this article, but it had been a long time, so I had to Google it. But before you Google, if you know the answer, type it in below so that you can look real smart to the other notaries watching this video. What's a holographic will? I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. Yeah, I'm listening to music in my head. All right. A holographic will, and I've notarized one of these reluctantly. Um, I don't know if I want to tell the story, so I'm just going to explain what it is. Holographic will is a will that is handwritten by the signer and signed and dated and notarized without any witnesses. Now I'm guessing, so that's what it is, holographic. And I guess because the entire will, which is um, I want my brother printer to go to my brother, and I want my iPhone 11 Pro to go to my sister. That's enough for friends and family and the probate judge to say, yeah, this looks like Michelle's handwriting and it sounds like her, so we know it's legit. So we're not worried about there not being any witnesses, but apparently not all states accept holographic wills. And I didn't see where I asked AI, Alabama Notaries, and Alabama didn't make the list. So ever since that first holographic will that I notarized early in my career, I told the woman, it's an elderly woman, I said, look, I don't know if this is going to be acceptable, but she insisted. Um, for whatever reason, she felt a sense of urgency. And so she did it. I notarized it. But after that first one, because I've been asked more times, can I just write it? And I'm just like, you know what? No, I'm not comfortable notarizing that. All right. A California notary properly followed identification and notarization procedures for an elderly signer's handwritten will. However, they were still caught in a probate dispute challenging the will's validity. Ultimately, the notary was dismissed from the disputing parties' global settlement. Yay, notary! But the notary exhausted $7,000 in legal fees from their $25,000 E&O policy. Wow. So the notary's defense that got him or her dismissed from being liable or for doing the wrong thing, $7,000. Again, thank goodness, $25,000 E&O policy. The takeaway, even when done correctly, notarizing wills can lead to legal complications. Wow. So what are your thoughts? Does this make you more nervous, more careful about notarizing signatures, especially on important documents? It does me, which is why I like this. You know, it's so easy when you've been a notary for as many years as I have. And for me, that's 20 years. Yeah, 20 years commission, 19 running a notary business. But there are plenty of Alabama notaries who have been commissioned longer than I have been. And we can get a little oh boy, what's the word? We can get a little loosey goosey. I don't want to say loosey goosey, comfortable, comfortable. You know, if nothing's come up thus far, it's easy for you to think that you're doing everything right and, you know, just continue to doing everything right and it should never be a problem. And that is clearly not the case. Um, there are a couple trends in these cases that I want to talk with you about. Give me just a quick second. Remember, we only covered 4 of the 10 cases, and I hope you will take time to read the entire article. 10 E&O cases that landed notaries in court. I want to thank Philip Brown, the Vice President of Communications at the National Notary Association, for writing such an interesting, timely, informative article. I've really enjoyed it. I was about to say I'm glad Alabama didn't make the list, but I think there was 1 or 2 cases where we don't know what state that the notary is located in. Um, I've been made aware of several cases recently involving Alabama notaries, and I'm trying to gather more information about those cases so that we can talk about that as well, not to point fingers, but just like these cases, so that we can learn how to avoid those situations. So to close, to wrap things up, just 10 quick, not even 10, just a couple takeaways. One, these cases reminded us that notaries can be accused and found guilty of wrongdoing. It does happen. And if it can happen to someone else, it can happen to me. Secondly, um, it's clear to me that it helps to have a lawyer to represent you as a notary in these cases. And it helps for the notary to have errors and omission insurance to help pay for the lawyer and any other settlement costs and court fees. The other takeaway for me is it appears that $25,000 is now the minimum policy amount that we need to get in this day and age. Now, I would not have, well, I did say it recently. I told a few notaries if they couldn't afford to buy a $25,000 policy, then get a $15,000 policy, get a 10,000. And I feel that way. Some insurance, insurance is better than none. But based on what we read, for the notaries who come to me for their errors and omission insurance, I'm going to really encourage them that 25,000 is the minimum. And I don't have any proof of what I'm going to say, but I believe it is true. I think we have the National Notary Association to thank for educating notaries years ago of the importance of buying errors and omission insurance. Again, I've been in this business long enough to remember when it wasn't really talked about. And it was because I did my signing agent certification and training on the NNA site that they had that information on their website. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I need to get it. But I would say that notary experts like Peter Van Alstyne, Michael Closen, both of which are considered notary experts in the field. They've both published books. They're both recommending that notaries purchase larger policy amounts based on what they're seeing. I say they're notary experts. They are frequently called upon to be expert witnesses in court cases involving notaries. That leads me to my next takeaway. I'm thinking those of us who are performing remote notarizations and real estate transactions, we probably need to be looking at $100,000 policy limits. I'm thinking at 25Ks. Couple notaries came this close, and we had example one went over, I believe, and I may not have covered that one. I am licensed to sell notary errors and omission insurance and notary bonds in 29 states, Alabama being one of them. If you want more information, a quote, just want to talk, check the description box. I'll have the list of the states where I am licensed and have permission to serve you in that way, and a way to reach out to me to start that process. Alabama has its share of legal cases going on involving notaries. Again, I'm still gathering information on those, and we'll do a video on that. Again, I think it means something to know, wow, this happened in our state. This happened to one of us. About a week ago, maybe 2 weeks now, I did a video on the notary surety bond. If you haven't seen that, I want to encourage you to watch at least, I know I went on and on. There are 3 videos, but check it out. Check them out. I think the first one I really want you to watch. It gives you an understanding of how that notary bond would apply in these situations as well, or wouldn't. And I am actively recording and working on a video that does a deep dive into notary errors and omission insurance and signing agent errors and omission insurance. So when that gets posted on the channel, make sure you check it out. And the best way for you to know when it is posted is for you to subscribe to the channel and then take that extra step to schedule a notification by clicking on the bell. And that way you will get a email or a message that says, hey, Michelle just posted this video on errors and omission insurance. Thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing me to talk about one of my favorite notary related topics. I hope you learned something. And if you have any follow-up questions, post them in the comments. I will definitely respond. Thanks so much and make it a great day.